Actually, Steve Robinson, the former astronaut, just told me 2 weeks ago he was on multiple shuttle missions. And he said, every time we came back, we hit space junk and cracked our windows.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Here's the Scoop from NBC News. I'm Yasmin Vasugin. So today on the show, we're talking about space junk and this rogue rocket booster that is barreling towards the moon at more than 5,000 miles an hour. It's going to crash into the moon overnight. I'm going to speak to NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello, who covers aviation and space for us. Plus, we're talking about money in politics amidst this midterm election season. And all month, we're going to be taking a deep dive into kind of new money in politics. Today, we want to focus on artificial intelligence and groups that are advocating for AI across this country. Up first, though. So today, the Senate Judiciary Committee voted along party lines to advance Todd Blanche's confirmation as Attorney General. This has been up in the air for the past few weeks. Last week, we talked about how the vote was held up because of two Republican senators, John Cornyn of Texas, Thom Tillis of North Carolina. They wanted written guarantees from Blanche that he was killing the Justice Department's $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund. This fund was set up after President Trump dropped his lawsuit against the IRS and could have given taxpayer-funded payouts to January 6 rioters. Well, on Sunday, Blanche did put it in writing, but is it smooth sailing now for him when it comes to the confirmation, or will other Senate Republicans block it? And is the anti-weaponization fund truly dead? For this, I want to bring in NBC News Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles, who took his vacation and is now back. But I did actually mistakenly text him still on his vacation, so apologies for that.
I think it says something, Yaz. The very first NBC responsibility I have after my vacation is spending time with you. So that shows you where my brain is.
Well, welcome back. So I ran through this whole back and forth that was happening with Cornyn and Tillis. We know Todd Blanche has now signed this order rescinding the anti-weaponization fund this weekend. And Cornyn mentioned it today.
Given this agreement with Mr. Blanche, I expect the department to live up to this in future litigation, and I will vote to advance him out of the committee today.
So what did this agreement actually say, and why was it enough for Cornyn and Tillis?
Well, I think you remember, Yaz, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I predicted to you this exact outcome, right? That John Cornyn and Thom Tillis were putting up a fight, but they wanted to get to yes. They were begging the administration, Todd Blanche and the Department of Justice, to give them some sort of piece of paper that would make them feel comfortable that they could vote yes. And that's exactly what we saw play out here. It took a long time to get there, and President Trump tried to derail it 2 or 3 different times. But eventually, they came up with language that basically says that this fund no longer exists. It can't be resurrected. And that was enough for Thom Tillis and John Cornyn to vote yes. I'm sure that's enough for 51 Republicans to vote yes. And my guess is by the end of the week, he'll be the next attorney general. But I do think, just judging by the way that President Trump continues to talk about the weaponization fund, the idea that this puts the nail in the coffin on this exercise, I think is a very, very, kind of Pollyannish view of all of this.
Okay, so, you're referring to what the president has said repeatedly now, which is, and I'm paraphrasing here, listen, I think this is a good thing. I think these folks should be reimbursed and so on and so forth, right? He is still supportive of this anti-weaponization fund. And the critics of what Blanche stated and signed on Sunday would say the way in which this was worded leaves the door open for him to potentially resurrect some sort of thing that would act as potentially this fund, this anti-weaponization fund, but not be named this anti-weaponization fund. Can you kind of walk us through that and how it is that could feasibly happen?
Well, let's first take a step back and recognize that all of this is a moving target, right? None of it is codified into law. So you need to think of it like an executive order. It's the Department of Justice saying, we're going to take advantage of this statute, which is a fund that's designed to provide restitution for people who've been wronged by the government in kind of a general sense. We're going to carve out a section of it to specifically give to folks that we feel have been wronged by the Department of Justice under the Biden administration. And members of Congress were angry about that. So they said, you need to end this. They said they'd end it. Then they said, well, you need to write something down that says that you're going to end it. And so they did that. But you're right. Within the language of the executive order, there's certainly wiggle room there. There's language in there that says, that essentially says if something comes up, if we learn new information, if there's some sort of specific thing that makes us feel as though someone is entitled to retribution, we'll seek avenues to do that. But when this is not something that's codified into law, it's a very loosey-goosey situation. At any point, just because he writes this thing today saying this is no longer a thing, he could tomorrow or the day after, 3 days after he's confirmed as Attorney General, write a new memo that says, well, actually, we've taken a second look at this and now we've decided that this fund needs to be resurrected. The only
but it has a different name. It'll
just have a different name. Right, exactly. And, maybe it'll have, some sort of different language or it'll pull from some different fund. But the only way that this was truly going to be completely killed was if Congress passed a law that says you can't do this specific thing. There weren't enough votes to do that. There are too many Republican supporters of President Trump, Republican leadership in both the Senate and the House. None of them wanted to take on President Trump. So this was the best that John Cornyn and Thom Tillis could hope for in this current environment. I will say this, Yaz, it does create roadblocks that didn't currently exist for some of these folks to actually get paid out as a result of it. But it by no means kills it indefinitely.
I'm hearing from you, you're pretty confident that Blanche is actually going to be confirmed and he's going to be the next Attorney General of the United States. There is, though, another issue that is outstanding. It hasn't just been this anti-weaponization fund. It is the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse, right, who have been speaking repeatedly on the Hill. And they are critical of the way in which then Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche handled the release of the Epstein files. So could that potentially be a roadblock for him as this thing makes it to the full Senate?
I mean, the short answer is no. There hasn't been another senator outside of Cornyn and Tillis that has publicly voiced opposition to him. There have been some that have been coy about how they're going to vote. But there's nobody that said, no, I'm not going to vote. And there's no one that has specifically said, because of his handling of the Epstein files, I don't feel comfortable confirming him as Attorney General. He had to deal with some Epstein-related stuff in the confirmation process. Thom Tillis basically said, I'm not going to vote yes unless you meet with Epstein survivors. He met with Epstein survivors. That meeting was widely thought to be a disaster by the folks that reported it out. That didn't seem to matter to Tillis. Tillis looked the other way and is going to vote yes. You'd have to find 4 Republican no's outside of Tillis and Cornyn on the floor to effectively kill this. And that's with Mitch McConnell potentially not being available to vote. So I just don't see it happening. I think he's on a fast track to confirmation. I think he'll be the Attorney General by the end of the week.
Ryan Nobles, welcome back.
We're doing it, Yaz.
So Arizona, Kansas, Missouri, Washington, and here's a big one, Michigan. They are all holding primaries today. In Michigan's 7th district, one candidate has made artificial intelligence a major part of his pitch to voters.
I'm Will Lawrence, and tech billionaires want to turn this whole field into a massive data center that'll jack up our energy bills and ruin our home values.
But this isn't the only race where the data center debate has played a major role. And AI-related groups are raising hundreds of millions of dollars to spend on races across this country. So for the next few weeks, we are going to be taking a look at money in the midterms, and especially these new players that are getting involved, who they're supporting, how they're doing it, and then what policy outcomes they're actually going for. So we're starting today with artificial intelligence. So I want to bring the NBC News national politics reporter Ben Kamisar, who has been digging into this. Hi, Ben.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I want to kind of start with a broad snapshot of money in this year's midterm elections. How is it stacking up against years prior? And is there kind of an overall theme that you have been seeing as you've been digging into this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just depends on how you look at this. From the super macro level, you're seeing Republican outside groups, Republican leaning outside groups are significantly better funded so far than the Democratic ones. But you have a lot of questions on what they're going to do with that money. So at the very macro level, President Trump's affiliate, Super PAC, has been raising hundreds of millions of dollars, but hasn't spent a dime yet. And so we're really interested in what they're going to do with that money. And then you have some of these other groups in these special interest fields, AI, crypto, the pro-Israel PACs, et cetera. And they're also raising a ton of money, but they're starting to spend it to a degree. And I think what I'm kind of interested in is how many of these general election debates will have tens of millions of dollars of money from AI, from crypto, from all of these special interests just raining down on them outside of the partisan spending we're used to.
So let's focus in on AI because that's what we want to target today. How are they spending their money in order to advance interests in artificial intelligence? And what type of candidates are they targeting?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And so I think the first thing that the first thing to say about this is that these groups, these AI groups, aren't spending on these ads about the issue of AI. They're following this trend that we've seen from a lot of special interests. That's basically just hit the bread and butter issues that matter to the electorate. So if these groups are playing in Democratic races, we hear a lot about ICE and immigration, and taxing, and taxes and things like that galvanize the Democratic base. If they're playing in Republican primaries, you'll hear more about the Republican issue set. You're not really, for the most part, having this battle about AI policy up front in the view of the voter. But that's what's happening below the surface.
Are they going for more Republicans or Democrats? Who are they supporting more?
So right now it's this interesting thing. Basically, there are these two umbrella groups. One is from the, it's a little loose, but the open AI universe, if you will. And then they're really pushing this national framework. Their argument is that there should not be state by state AI regulations. There should just be one piece of national AI regulation and have that work across the country. They argue that that's the best way to not stifle innovation. Then you have this other group that's more supported by the Anthropic, for those of you that use Claude. And so those people are more open to restrictions on sort of these state by state levels. And so that's where these two power centers have been raising a ton of money and starting to slowly but surely come into these races. But they're doing it on both sides because ultimately they're trying to make sure that candidates that support their vision are the ones that are, on the ballot for voters to choose in November. Whether they'll start to play in the fall, whether they'll go harder for Republicans or harder for Democrats remains to be seen because they're still fighting these fights on who will actually be on the ballot in the first place. And they're doing that with both parties.
So you talked about some of the big issues, and regulation obviously is one of them, state by state regulation versus federal regulation. There's also the issue of data centers, which we've talked about on this show. I interviewed New York Governor Kathy Hochul about that. I just mentioned as I was coming to Michigan 7, it's been a big topic there amongst the Democratic candidates, William Lawrence, Matt Masdam, and Bridget Brink. There's a Gallup poll showing that something like 70% or so of Americans do not want to live near an AI data center. How are these PACs navigating the backlash to the building of these data centers? And what are candidates doing to come out for or against them?
Yeah, I mean, I think this example in Michigan is really relevant. This is on the ballot today, right? It's Michigan's 7th district. It's this fascinating progressive versus establishment divide. And I've talked to a lot of the folks who are supporting the progressive candidate. I've talked to everybody in this race, but the ones who are supporting the progressive candidate are saying, if he wins, it's not going to be about, your typical progressive left versus center left issues. This isn't going to look like the Senate race that is kind of more of that cookie cutter. They really think that this anti-data center push from William Lawrence, this Democrat in Michigan, is the galvanizing force here for the voters. They think it's the kind of thing that can cut across the lines. And they think it's something that, whether you're moderate, whether you're more left, whether you're more right, that to your point, the polling is showing that people are super pissed off about this. And it's why they think he might win. And to your question about sort of what happens in the fall, I think it is going to be fascinating to see, right? Because you could see a situation where some of these AI groups spend heavily against William Lawrence in the fall because they see him as an existential threat. But the Lawrence people say, hey, this is the kind of issue that actually could help a progressive who, conventional wisdom would say would be have a harder time reaching swing voters, actually cut through some of the noise in the fall.
So, I think I think back to the president's inauguration, Ben, and behind him was leaders from Meta, OpenAI, Google. They have been now courting the president for quite some time. Many of them today are meeting at the White House with officials to talk about voluntary government safety testing in artificial intelligence after their AI tools breached other companies' systems. So if the kind of leaders of these top tech companies, AI companies, already have a strong foothold with this administration and with this president, why is it so important to get buy-in from these local lawmakers?
Well, I think, a lot of this stuff is happening at the local level, right? When you're thinking about statewide moratoriums being discussed at the state level on these data centers, when you're thinking about, the federal government can do a lot here that could be helpful to the AI companies, certainly can be hurtful to them. We saw the whole flap with that new Anthropic model, Mythos 5, I believe it was called, right? And how it went down and, for a while and then came back, right? So there's obviously a lot to be done for these groups and currying favor to the administration. But when you're talking about these like local fights over where to build a data center, ultimately the state and local legislators are going to be a lot of the ones that decide a lot of this. And that's why you're seeing a lot of attention on these races, both, not just the federal, congressional races, people with sway, but also I would imagine folks are going to start paying more attention and paying more money into these more local fights, because that's the kind of, arcane zoning rule that may actually be the difference between a gigantic project or not.
Ben Kamisar, fascinating stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
So at 2:34 a.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday morning, an unmanned, discarded SpaceX rocket booster is expected to collide with the moon, kicking up this massive cloud of lunar dust. Now, to be clear, this was not intentional, but it's happening. So NASA wants to use this moment to learn more about what the moon is actually made of. And it has got me wondering, should we worry that there is just floating space junk crashing into the moon? So for more on this, I want to bring in NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello, who covers all things aviation and space. Hi, Tom.
Hey there. I get the cool stuff, in other words.
As always, you always get the cool stuff. What is happening tonight?
2:34 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm sure you'll be up watching.
Yes.
And we'll find out if the moon is made of cheese. We know it's not because, of course, we've landed astronauts on the moon. We've landed rovers on the moon. But to your point, this was an accident. This really wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't planned. But because it is going to happen, because this booster rocket from SpaceX, which is from a mission that launched in January 2025 to deliver robotic probes or rovers to the moon, now that booster rocket, which has been kind of floating in space for the last 18 months, it's going to slam into the moon at 5,400 miles per hour. I mean, that is as fast as a bullet flies out of the end of a rifle. And when it does that, it is going to create a massive crater, but also we expect a huge plume that's going to rise up off of the lunar surface, and that plume is going to have, we expect, dust and dirt. Now, what exactly will be the composition of that dust and dirt? We don't know. But more to the point, more importantly, the astronomers, the NASA experts aren't sure. They have a pretty good feel for what the moon is comprised of because we have lunar samples from the Apollo days. But that's all a pretty superficial or a surface scoop of dust. Now we think that we're going to get a much deeper sample. The trouble is we don't have anything, or NASA doesn't have any experiments on the moon to immediately sample that or to grab it in, there's not an atmosphere, of course, above the lunar surface, but in its air, quote unquote, there's nothing to sample that. So they have to rely on telescopes and photographic evidence and try to analyze it that way.
So NASA is targeting a mission to the moon in the next 2 years. and they want to build a base there, right? So what could they gain to learn from what is beneath the moon's surface?
So NASA's plan is to build a massive space base on the moon. I mean, we're not talking like 1 square kilometer. We're talking potentially 100 square kilometers on the moon. Well, then if you're going to be drilling down into the moon and anchoring your various buildings, maybe, by the way, also a nuclear power generator on the moon, then you need to know how firmly you need to be anchoring everything in a position, right? So that's kind of some of the hard information they're hoping to learn. And then also, they learned when they slammed into the South Pole with their rocket a number of years ago that there was water ice there that they might be able to tap. Okay, is there water ice buried deeply under any other part of the moon? So that will also be part of what they'd love to know. I mean, they've got a long wish list of what they would like to learn. The question is how much they'll be able to actually discern from photographic evidence and telescopes.
Speaking of litter and speaking of space, there's, 130 million or so pieces of space junk that are just floating around up there.
Yeah.
Does that pose any risk either to the Earth, to space? I mean, should we be worried about space junk in general?
I think the answer to all three questions is yes. But the 130 million pieces, and that's everything from a small paint chip to literally a piece of satellite and rocket debris. Most of it is orbiting in low Earth orbit, not around the moon, low Earth orbit. And it gets worse every single day that we put another satellite up, whether that's SpaceX, whether that's Amazon, NASA, whether it's the Chinese. Every time we put another rocket up there, then we're adding to the clutter. Now, the risk is that a piece could crash into another piece, or specifically that one satellite could degrade or be hit by a piece of debris, then that cascades, and then it hits another satellite, and another, and another, and another, and pretty soon you've got a real catastrophe in orbit. Actually, Steve Robinson, the former astronaut, just told me 2 weeks ago he was on multiple shuttle missions, and he said, every time we came back, we hit space junk and cracked our windows.
Wow.
I said, every time? And he said, yes. But you may remember last November, the Chinese astronauts on board their own space station was hit by debris. And then they had to send up a replacement ship to get them back. The bottom line is the concern is it could hit a spaceship, as you suggested. It could hit a satellite. And much of what's up there is going to come back down to Earth. And it already is raining down. Most of it goes into the oceans. But, we've had pieces actually fall into people's backyards already.
Wow.
And it seems almost inevitable that eventually it's going to come down on a city and potentially cause somebody serious injury or worse.
Okay. Taking a turn then. Are you going to be watching tonight? Tomorrow morning? Are you going to be watching in the morning?
Yeah, I'll be watching the replay at 5 in the morning or maybe 6 in the morning. I've asked, is there any chance we could see it from Earth with the naked eye? And the chances are very remote.
Okay.
And also, NASA is saying it may take a few days before we actually get any imagery back.
Okay. Tom Costello, thank you.
You bet.
All right. That is going to do it for us at Here's the Scoop from NBC News. I'm Yazan Basugian. We'll be back tomorrow with whatever the day may bring. And if you like what you saw and you heard, press the subscribe button. We'll see you tomorrow.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.